Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com.
Brigadier General John Buford. I was born in 1826 in Woodford County, Kentucky, into a slaveholding family. I was appointed to West Point, graduated in the middle of my class in 1847. I was commissioned with the Dragoons and sent west. When the war broke out in 1861, I was stationed at Fort Crittenden, Utah. I got a letter from the governor of Kentucky. My good friend John Gibbon was in my room, and I told him I got this letter. I was offered any rank and commission, any command I wanted in the Confederate Army if I would just come home and serve. Gibbon asked me, "What'd you say, John?" And I told him that I'm a captain in the United States Army, and I reckon I'm going to stay one. A man's only allowed 3 oaths in his life, and that's to his God and to his country and to his spouse, and you should never, ever go back on any one of them. So I did stay in the Union. I was called back to Washington, D.C., and was made Adjutant General of the Cavalry, which mostly was a desk job, and I did not like that. I wanted a field command, which I was given in 1862. First major action was Second Battle of Manassas. My division was tasked with covering the retreat, unfortunately, of the Union Army. I was shot there. I was wounded. I was knocked from the saddle. The reports were that I had been killed in action, and in fact, the Army was preparing and making funeral plans for me. However, I chose to skip that funeral and returned back to active duty, again as a division commander of the United States Cavalry. As we move forward, we had several other engagements. There was 2 things I really did not like. I did not like reporters or spies. In fact, if I had to choose one, I would prefer a spy over a reporter, because at least they were honorable. They had a cause they were working for. In fact, we caught a spy on our way through Maryland in 1863. We caught him in our camps at breakfast time. We gave him a fair trial, and we had him hung by 10 o'clock that morning. So it was a pretty efficient process that we were able to utilize those days. But as we were moving north from Virginia up through Maryland and into Pennsylvania, I was the left front of the Union Army, commanding 1st Division, United States Cavalry, Army of the Potomac. We knew there was large numbers of Confederate forces just to our west, behind the mountains and ridges. We came up the Emmitsburg Road, and as we were coming into Gettysburg, we saw a brigade of Confederate soldiers leaving Gettysburg. Apparently they had gotten word that we were arriving, and they were headed west towards Cashtown as we came into town. So as we did some additional reconnaissance, I sent messages back to both General Reynolds and General Meade that the Confederates are massed here just west of this town in mass. They were in large numbers. We didn't know how many of the Confederate corps were there, but we knew at least one. We had captured a couple of prisoners that were from A.P. Hill's corps, so we knew he was here. So that night of June 30th, I started to deploy vedettes as far west as 5 miles west of town, up on Hers Ridge, and we also posted on McPherson Ridge, and we also posted on Seminary Ridge. Our job was to hold the Confederates out of town, because as we rode into town, I saw the ridge line south of town that I knew would be great defensive position. If we could get our infantry there in time, we could hold that position and still entice the Confederates to attack us and probably defeat them totally over a period of time if we could hold that position, which we did, which is what our intent was. I sent that message to General Reynolds, and he concurred also through couriers. So we had our vedettes posted the night of June 30th. We could see large numbers of Confederate campfires off to the west. That morning, Harry Heath brought his division in towards Gettysburg because they believed that we were a militia and that they would brush us aside. I had 2,400 troopers with me, only 2 of my 3 brigades. And a fourth of those men had to hold horses, so we were down to under 2,000 active men. In order to convince the Confederates that we were a big force and slow them down, and time was the essence. That was the big issue. We had to hold them out until the rest of the Army of the Potomac could arrive and occupy that hill and the ridge south of town. So instead of deploying a man every foot, I dismounted the troopers, deployed them about every 6 or 8 feet apart. Colonel Gamble's brigade On the left, Colonel Devon's brigade to the north. We made it appear as though we were a bigger force. I had a battery of cannons. Instead of putting them all in one spot like normal, I spread them out so that in fact it appeared as though we had 6 battery of cannons. Spreading our men out, all of my men were equipped with at least single-shot breech-loading carbines. I had a few with repeater Spencer rifles. However, if you're on a horseback carrying a rifle, that's really not all that convenient. So most of them had single shots, some Burnside, some Spencers, some Sharps. It was not consistent, but they were breech loaders. And on a single shot breech loader, you can fire about 6 or 7 well-aimed shots a minute. By spreading our men out with that much firepower, hitting the Confederate lines as they came into town, they did believe we were a much larger force of infantry, and so they slowed down. They deployed into battle lines. It took them another 2 hours. We started fighting and engaging them about 5:30 that morning, so we were able to slow them up quite a bit. It gave time for Reynolds Corps to arrive. By mid-morning, we all have a difference of opinion exactly what time that was because our watches did not seem to all match with each other. But I can assure you from the amount of fighting that we did, it was several hours that we were on our own. One division of cavalry with only 2 brigades facing an entire Confederate corps of about 25,000 men. So we had to hold them off. And we did, and by mid to late morning, my perspective certainly is that it was closer to late morning than mid-morning. The lead units of the 1st Corps did arrive on the field. At that point in time, we were redeployed to the left and right flanks of the infantry to help cover the flanks and to, in case necessary, to cover a retreat. The fighting continued all day. We then were in fact the last units on the field as the infantry retreated back through town and up onto Cemetery Hill. It was my cavalry brigades that covered that retreat, and in fact our last casualties were late in the afternoon of July 1st after the infantry had made it back onto Cemetery Hill and my men were trying to get back up on the hill. We were fired upon with friendly fire, and my last casualties were in fact friendly fire from the infantry forces up on Cemetery Hill. That night we were deployed off to the right with Devon's brigade over to the right by Culp's Hill, Gamble's brigade to the left in front of Cemetery Hill. We stayed there overnight and then observed the movements of Confederate troops early in the morning of July 2nd to the south end or our left, and we were reporting that. With that, I can tell you, while some people think the Confederates won on the first day, I would offer that it was exactly the opposite. We accomplished our goal specifically. We held the Confederates in place instead of having General Lee move his army to Harrisburg. We gave them a reason to stay in Gettysburg area to fight. We held them off long enough for the rest of the Union Army to arrive on site. We did exactly what our intention was. To me, that makes a battle a win.